So, one rounder here, and I wanted to throw out something about cycling. Um, if you are a cyclist in the United States, a lot of times you have experience with people who don't particularly care for it. But one of the things I think that we often we don't realize is that there is an undercurrent of animosity, and I touched on this briefly when I talked about helmets and why people don't wear them. At least some people. And I think there's a lot of people who, as novices, don't want to be seen as a cyclist. There are some activities that can be pursued halfway or on a casual basis, and you don't really commit yourself to associating with that group of people or that image. Um, there are casual softball players, baseball players, people who play, you know, cards but aren't gamblers, right? People who they watch football, but they're not a professional football player, and they don't seem to be associated with a lot of the negative things that sports heroes might do. Let's say pulling a gun at a nightclub, or getting drunk and crashing their car. Um, that sort of uh, antisocial activity. However, when one is a cyclist, a lot of times it seems that anything related to cycling gets infused into, that person is supposed to then represent all of cycling. And if you're an avid cyclist, you've seen this. You've had people, I mean, I've had people come up to me because they know I bike. As you can see, I have quite a few bikes. And they'll come up to me and they'll say, oh, well, I had an encounter with a cyclist the other day who did this, whatever this happens to be. May not even be something wrong. I mean, may have just been that that person misperceived what the cyclist did. But you see this, and it's like they think you're the spokesperson for everybody who rides a bike, from the avid rider who knows what he's doing and is responsible, to the total novice, to the person who might not even consider themselves a cyclist, they just occasionally ride a bike, to the drunk who got his license taken away and he's putting around town in his grandma's three-speed, right? So, when you look at people on bikes, there's a whole variety, right? And as a cyclist, when I think of cycling, when I think of riding a bicycle, I think of other avid cyclists like myself, people who know what they're doing, they're responsible, they understand something of the bicycle's place on the road, as well as in other activities like off-road cycling, and who know also a little bit about the history. We know, for example, that the inflatable tire was invented by Dunlop for the bicycle, not the car. We know that the first wide and well-paved roads in the United States were actually implemented at the behest of cycling advocates over 100 years ago. Groups like the League of American Wheelmen, now the League of American Bicyclists, a cycling advocacy group that's been around for well over 100 years. Um, and this isn't to say we have anything necessarily against cars or drivers or anything like that, but I mean, I drive. But the idea is simply that we understand the entire the entire context. Now, not every cyclist is like this. A lot of people don't think about things like history and background and context. I do, right? I tend to look at all as many peripherals as I can and try to get a fuller picture. Um, but generally speaking, the avid cyclist is not going to be the one that is doing these things that the drivers get upset about. He's not going to be going the wrong way down the street. He's not going to be riding at night with no lights. He's not going to be doing whatever. Now, he may be riding in such a way that bothers the drivers, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's doing anything wrong. It may just be the driver's misperception. But regardless, he's supposed to be somehow the spokesman for and or responsible for everything that anybody else who's ever been on a bike does. So if pro racers are doping, it's supposed to reflect on me? Like, what the hell? If some drunk is riding at night with no lights and gets, causes an accident, that's my fault? If you have a bunch of kids that are riding the wrong way down the street or on the sidewalk and they knock somebody over, like, what did I have to do with that? And if you do happen to have somebody, riding on the road who's an asshole, or excuse my French, what does that have to do with me? I don't know. Yet I'm supposed to be the spokesman for every cyclist in existence. And I think part of this comes down to the fact that there is, in some quarters of this country, an animosity towards cycling. So, if you're a cyclist, you get sort of singled out as, like, you do that, so what do you have to say for this? It's like, when if I have an incident with a careless driver who's, let's say, driving a Volkswagen, and I know one of my coworkers drives a Volkswagen, do I accost him and say, hey, dude, what do you know about this? Explain to me why all Volkswagen drivers are jerks. No, no. But with cycling, somehow that happens. So I just want to throw this out there. And if you're one of those people who doesn't like cyclists, or you think we're all, so and so's, just keep in mind, there are many different kinds of people on bikes. Not all of them are avid cyclists. And more to the point, the individual avid cyclist is not responsible for what anybody else does. All right. Now, like anything else, there's a culture, there's a set of accepted norms. And yes, obviously the avid participants in that activity can help shape that. But largely we already do, right? Generally speaking, most cyclists are a hell of a lot, most avid cyclists, most experienced cyclists are a hell of a lot safer than most drivers. For example, I can't tell you the last time I saw an avid experienced rider talking on the phone while riding his bicycle. Have I seen, some young kid doing it? Maybe yes. I've seen several young kids doing it. I've never seen an experienced avid cyclist doing it, and I certainly haven't done it myself. Um, the avid cyclist rides in the proper direction of traffic, has lights at night, etc. You know, Generally speaking, the cycling culture is already one of safety, of responsibility, and of you know, just not being a jerk. So, again, some of this perception might come from the fringe, from people who aren't avid cyclists. Maybe they're just novices and they don't know any better. Maybe they're, you know, again, some young kid or some drunk who got his license taken away. But generally speaking, you know, that's not us. That's not what we're about. And, you know, don't expect me, one, to be able to explain why that person's doing that. And two, don't expect me to be responsible for it. Okay. Um, you know, I mean, unless you want me to hold you responsible for what every other driver in the world does, which wouldn't be fair either, right? One rider out.